5th episode of the 3rd season of the Detours in Music podcast. My name is Laura Rupel, and today I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Kristy Swift, organist and musicologist, and now assistant professor of musicology at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. I hope you enjoy. One more thing to mention before we get started with the interview is I definitely had a bit of a lapse this morning and I forgot to click record on my main device, so thankfully I do backup record, so the audio will change about 3.5 to 4 minutes in and be much better. So trust me, I know that the first couple minutes are not as great, and I do apologize.
So my name is Kristy Swift, and I am assistant professor of musicology educator at CCM, and I appreciate you talking with me today. Laura, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. My first question for you is, how did you get your start in music?
So I got my start in music when my parents signed me up for piano lessons. I was about 6 years old, and I can't say that I had some sort of divine inspiration or sudden passion for studying music, but I grew up in a very small rural town. There were maybe 3 or 4 piano teachers. There was, of course, a lot of great music, bluegrass groups, church choirs, gospel choirs, school ensembles, music theater productions, but really no opera or symphony or anything like that. And so my parents thought it would be a good idea for me to study music, and they bought a piano for us. And I was in band, junior high and high school band, and I played the clarinet, which I also was not terribly passionate about. I did love being in the band, though, because of that sense of community. But when I was 13 years old, then something really strange and kind of wonderful happened. I played the organ in church, like for a whole service, and that's something that I probably never should have done. Some adults should have stopped me, but no one did. Instead, they encouraged me, and then after that, I was playing for weddings and funerals, and my payment often was in the form of maybe a pair of earrings or a corsage, wearable flowers, which I was really grateful for. But I was so young then I don't think I really knew exactly what I was doing. But because of the support and all, then I've been playing organ in churches for about the last 40 years or so, because of those early experiences.
Were you ever formally trained on organ, or was that kind of self-taught?
I was, and so what happened is that my parents thought, gee, if you're going to play the organ in church, maybe you should have some organ lessons. Seemed like a good idea. So I did have some with the local piano teacher, which was great. And then when I was working on my 2-year degree at a local community college, I started taking lessons at the University of Florida with a really wonderful teacher whose name is Willis Bodine. And he was this amazing musician. He had this really profound influence, I think, on kind of how I approached church music. And the school had this enormous organ, very, very large, 5 manuals and pedal, and the key desk or the console was way up, very, very high in the auditorium. So like on the 3rd story of this very beautiful Gothic inspired building. And often I had to practice really late at night, especially when preparing for juries and recitals, because the building was so busy during the day. And again, we lived in this neighboring rural town. So I did a lot of driving back and forth, a lot of time in the car. And then I went on to get my bachelor's degree in music education, actually at the University of Florida, and then a master's degree in organ performance. And then I was fortunate enough to come to CCM for a DMA in organ and to study with Roberta Gary, she's one of the most savvy and inspiring musicians I've ever met. She's, with all due respect, if she should ever hear this, she's kind of like the Yoda of, organ to me. She just has this very wise, kind of even-keeled, sort of deeply knowledgeable experience and expertise that she brings to everything. And she taught me so many things that I've really carried with me. So,
when was your realization that you wanted to pursue music at the collegiate level?
I think it must have been my experiences there at the University of Florida playing that instrument. I had not really considered music professionally. As I said, I mean, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of music in my home growing up, but I don't think it was something that I thought I would ever do kind of as a job or as a career, if that makes sense. Until suddenly people were asking me to do that, which was very odd to me. I mean, they actually wanted to give me payment, to play for their wedding or their funeral or their recital or whatever, instead of, with all due respect, the earrings and the wearable flowers and all that, which are beautiful gestures, but the idea that one could sort of make a living or almost make a living doing that was just completely not in my way of thinking then. Yeah.
Do you think that you attended that school just because of proximity, or what drew you to their program?
That's a really great question. I really attended there because, as you said, it was close by. I was able to pay in-state tuition, which was incredibly reasonable then, not at all like tuition rates today. I received a scholarship from the Friends of Music and the Department of Music. I typically had often two jobs, usually a church job and then some kind of job at the university, like a library job, a teaching assistant job, that sort of thing. But generally it was very reasonable financially. My family, again, lived in the neighboring town. So I was often living rent-free, which helped a great deal. So on the one hand, I feel like it was a very solid and wonderful and inspiring education. It was also pragmatic. I mean, I just did not face a lot of the challenges that so many of our students are now facing. So
yeah. And you were a music education major. What do you think it was just that organ that you were able to practice on that made you decide, I really need to hone in this craft?
I think it was that instrument. I think it was the teacher I mentioned, Willis Bodine. I think it was the community of organists there. I really wanted to teach, and I knew that, but I also really wanted to spend a lot of time playing the organ. That was something that was so new to me, or at least playing the organ in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just something that I hadn't done, and to have that experience in church, but then to be introduced to, I guess today, what we would call, to all of the solo repertoire, which I just really hadn't been able to play before because I just didn't know it. Yeah.
Where did you go for your master's degree?
I went to the University of Florida for my master's degree also because, again, it was just very affordable for me.
Yeah.
That was a master's degree in Oregon. And then I came to Cincinnati to CCM for the DMA in Oregon. And also then I ended up going back for the PhD in musicology.
We will definitely talk more about that. What is something you struggled with either in your undergraduate degree or in those early years of your education? And this can be kind of a technical specific thing you struggled with, or more of a general, like, looking back, this is what I think about.
I really love this question. And I think I struggled with something that a lot of musicians struggle with, and that was and is not being perfect. Realizing that, what does perfect even look like, or what does perfect sound like? Do we know that? Because that's an individual thing. But I do remember things like, and again, I suspect that many of the same things our students today struggle with. What am I playing on my recital? Do I have enough time to practice? Will I be ready for my boards or juries or recitals, or how are my grades? Why do I have to take this class or that class, and how's it going to help me play the organ better or teach in public schools or whatever it is I'm going to do? So I think that to some extent, many of us struggle with those things, and maybe I have that in common with some students, but I also think our students today have so many more things to struggle with, more things than I did. And I don't want to take a turn for the negative, but I mean, many of our students now have multiple jobs and substantial student loans. And, some of them are struggling with deep financial, emotional, mental health issues, and familial divisions, and issues of diversity and equity and inclusion and representation, safety, and so many other things. And those have always been around, but now they are exacerbated and heightened, I think, in ways that certainly they never were for me. And a lot of the reason that they are is because I think they've come into the light, which is great, because now we can use them to sort of help, improve things and empower our students and kind of make progress and move forward through all of this. But I still think I do share with a lot of students today that kind of need to be perfect.
Yeah. I would agree that the basic framework for being a student in general, or especially being a music student, is what can be very overwhelming sometimes, because there's a lot of like secrets or like hidden knowledge, where it's like a lot of assumptions made about what people know or what needs to get done for a degree. And I think within music, a lot of that isn't shared necessarily with each other, or how we're doing it, or that none of us feel perfect, maybe, is a very good point.
That is extremely well explained. I mean, that's exactly, you and I share that, Laura.
Yeah.
I think that as educators, I feel very strongly that to the best of my ability, it's my responsibility to help improve things. And that means, of course, as I see improvement, as I define it and assess it for our students. But I mean, I remember university professors saying things to me like, I had to do it, so you have to do it. I had to go through it, so you have to go through it. Back in the day, we didn't have it easy like you do today. And it is sort of like this, as you said, it's like this lock, and we're given a key sometimes, and we're all running around trying to find that lock that, or that our key fits, when in fact, really we need to be transparent with our students, and we need to listen to them and hear them. I think we have to give them agency over their own work. We need to offer them choices and support them in making those choices. Rather than giving a student an exam. I mean, I can write exams all day long, and I can choose things that I know students aren't going to be able to respond to, because I think they're important for some arbitrary reason. But, what if I ask them to read a text or watch a TED Talk or reflect on something or inquire about something from their own point of view? I mean, I'm just thinking of an assignment that some students did actually in one of my classes last semester, actually, in protest music, and then a similar assignment in my Black opera class this semester. And I have to be very careful because I self-identify as a privileged white woman, and so my voice needs to be muted often when there is a place for greater representation, obviously. But students watch this performance of Rhiannon Giddens. I don't know. Do you know Rhiannon Giddens?
I don't know.
She's actually has a voice degree in voice from Oberlin. So she's a trained classical, if you will, opera singer. And she is doing this great work in minstrelsy and other things, really American roots music. And so one of the performances that she has done a number of times, she plays a song and she sings, it's called At the Purchaser's Option, and she plays banjo, and it's this kind of historic banjo, and which is an instrument from the African diaspora. And so this song At the Purchaser's Option is about an enslaved woman. And so we listened to this, and the narrator is this woman who's going to, and this is really sensitive here in your podcast, but she's going to be sold, and she has a young child, and she doesn't know if her child will go with her or not. And we compare that to a Saturday Night Live skit from the end of 2020. You may have seen it, where the characters Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, I don't know if you've seen that, but they're sort of talking about how they're not going to have their jobs anymore, right? They're being fired because they're stereotypical. Well, anyway, the point is all of that comes out of minstrelsy, which used to be called Black opera. And so I would much rather have students kind of respond to that, make a podcast like you're doing, a website, a TikTok, a slideshow, a comic, any kind of medium that appeals to them, to talk about those intersections and what they mean to us now, rather than, gee, here's the test, and I have a lock, and I hope you have the right key to open that. It's like you said, the secrets. I mean, why is that a secret?
Yeah. I think it's great to hear that there are professors at, I'm sure everywhere, but especially at CCM, that are working hard to give the students the, like you said, the tools or the keys and the lock maybe, and they can create their own idea of what, I don't know, the intersection of what their learning is.
Yeah, I think that's extremely well said. And I think we have to support and empower students to have choices so they can explore their own interests, because in the world, that's what one does. I mean, you don't have necessarily somebody handing something to you and saying, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. There are many choices. And I think every single day we wake up and we are presented with a set of problems, right? Not bad problems, just problems. I mean, what am I going to do today? How am I going to structure my day? That's what we do in research all the time. We ask questions and we have problems. And being able to sort of grapple with those problems and come up with creative solutions, I think that people who are empowered to do that are going to be our leaders in music and really in every field. So
that's excellent. This can go very hand in hand, but do you have advice for younger students who things are not going as expected? And my kind of follow-up question for this one has to do with the coronavirus and how you think that maybe has impacted students' outlook on careers in the arts.
So this question makes me think of Lady Gaga.
Okay.
And I'm thinking of, I think it's in an interview where she said something like, you have to fail, then get better, then fail, then get better. And that's really hard. And I, as a person who has failed at many things, but I think we have to fail, then get better, then fail, and then get better. I mean, I think for your question, I think it depends on the student.
Yeah.
I think it depends upon exactly what things aren't going as expected, and then kind of what was the expectation. I mean, I can remember being a younger player, excuse me, not making progress in performance. And I think we've all probably been in that situation where we're questioning ourselves, we're questioning our ability, we're questioning the future. You know, I want to be able to play this music. I want to play that music. I want to play like this person. I want to play better. I'm just not getting it. And then all of the complications, as you said, that we've all had with COVID-19 and remote performances and all of that. But for me, I try really hard to stay right in the moment. And I think that practicing is important. I think it's a necessity, but it also often feels like a luxury to me in the best ways. And I think if we enjoy practicing, if we enjoy the process, and it sounds very maybe idealistic and even romantic and naive, but I think if we enjoy the process, then I think we will get there. We may not get to the place we planned to get. Maybe, you know, I wanted that seat in the orchestra, but there aren't many seats available in many orchestras, so maybe I'm not going to get that. But maybe I've developed some skills and again, some creative ways to solve problems in which I can do something else. Maybe I can form my own digital orchestra. You know, maybe I can form my own kind of online group. Maybe I can, here's a wonderful idea. Maybe I can start a series of podcasts, you know, I mean, which is absolutely, in my opinion, that's taking sort of what you have and really making it into something. So
yeah, we have lots of options, even though there are problems.
Exactly.
What would you be doing if you were not a musician?
I think I might be a veterinarian, or maybe a nurse, but probably a veterinarian. I think I would open a nonprofit clinic and like a shelter. I think I'd probably treat animals and then I'd give them to maybe housing insecure people and, you know, children and elderly people and maybe who need end of life care. This doesn't have a lot to do with music necessarily, but my family and I have always had pets, shelter or rescue animals, cats, dogs, hamsters, parakeets, bearded dragons, you name it. So we have sort of an open door policy here. Come on in. So we went to the shelter one time and we met this cat and her name was Betty Ann. And we really wanted to rescue her and bring her home, but we couldn't because she was part of this end of life care program that the shelter ran. And so when patients were terminal, Betty Ann, and this was her job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Betty Ann would leave and she would go stay with the patient until tragically the person passed away. And then she'd come back to the shelter and then she'd go somewhere else. And I often thought, boy, that would be great to have like an in-house veterinarian to actually run kind of a nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
that did something like that. And I think we can do that with music too.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, a group of students in my class, music and disability, actually, so many fascinating projects that students are doing. But this group of choral conductors, they're working on a project about street choirs.
Mm.
And so these are housing insecure people who have joined musical organizations, particularly choirs. And while everyone who is housing insecure is not necessarily disabled, many people are, and they have experienced some kind of trauma. And it seems like these groups, these ensembles, these street choirs are becoming not just, sort of a fun thing to do on the night, but these groups are becoming actual parts, mainstays in the fabric of their lives. I mean, they're actually integral to their daily lives. And so there again, I think that's another area that we need to explore that's really underdeveloped. Again, creative problem solving.
Yeah. Kind of the music therapy. I don't know a lot about that, but it seems similar to maybe the cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you changed your career focus in your professional life? Particularly, another question would be, when was your switch to musicology and what kind of drove you to that field?
I think I went back for the PhD in musicology because I really liked writing and research, and I really wanted to teach for a lot of the reasons that I've mentioned today. And quite frankly, students, I think, have just incredible creativity. They are accomplished, particularly our students at CCM. I mean, when a student comes to CCM, a student is already pretty accomplished because it's not an easy place to get into necessarily. And the students are so accomplished and intelligent and curious and persistent, and as I said, wildly creative. And it's, quite self-serving and selfishly, I guess, it's incredibly motivating and stimulating for me in my own work. To talk with students and hear their ideas and, ways of seeing the world that I just never thought of, ways of conceptualizing, performing, thinking about music that often I haven't thought of.
Yeah.
So that has made me really enjoy teaching. And I think that's really why I wanted to do that, in addition to playing the organ. Practicing the organ, like any instrument, particularly I think with the organ, though, involves a lot of time maybe in the practice room alone, which can be great. But there is a very different kind of motivation and stimulation, at least for me, that comes from working with students. And that's why I wanted the PhD, because I thought, okay, maybe, just maybe someday I can actually, do this for real. So.
Yeah. I was actually just listening to a podcast this morning about kind of the snowball effect, and various different ways it can apply, but it kind of seems like the classes you teach and the types of projects you do seem to have had kind of like a snowball effect from maybe when you were younger to now. And my impression is that you're always trying to do new things and try to expand your mind and your students' minds.
I want to do new things, and I have to be careful here, but I don't necessarily have an expertise. I don't have an expertise in something called Black opera. I mean, I don't have expertise in something called music and disability, but I've read some, and I've listened to people who do. And so to provide a framework and a venue and a platform and a place for students and me to explore these newer things. Another kind of newer area that's emerging now is sound, music, and trauma. And I'm supposed to teach a course on that coming up as well. And, you know, some of the same musics are still there. Some of the same people are still there, but framing them in these newer ways is really exciting. And again, it allows these lenses and these perspectives that we really haven't had before, at least some of us. So I'm grateful for these new opportunities. And I think we have to keep creating these opportunities for our students and also supporting them in their projects.
Yeah, excellent. Looking back, are there detour moments in your life and career?
I think there must have been detour moments. And also, I can say that I kind of think of that fable of the tortoise and the hare. And so sometimes I've been quite the tortoise, and it has taken me a very long time. On the one hand, I could see it that way. It's taken me a really long time to get places, but like finishing my dissertation took a really long time. And on the other side, though, did it really take a long time, or did it just take as long as it needed to take? I mean, it reminds me of the film Amadeus. I don't know if you've seen that about Mozart, right? And so Emperor Joseph II, there's that anecdote where he says to Mozart, "Oh, too many notes, dear Mozart, too many notes." And Mozart says, "Just as many as necessary, Your Majesty." So I sort of think, I don't know if it took too long to get here. I don't know if there were too many detours, or maybe there were just as many detours as were needed. And I don't think I've arrived anywhere yet. So
yeah, we're still on the journey.
I know we should do this again in 5 or 10 years and go, what were the detours now?
Yeah, I would love that.
Have we made it there yet? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that can also lend to your point about what is perfect. And, we're all kind of, maybe everyone thinks they've still not arrived. And that's kind of part of the magic and the downside of creative fields, is that we've never really truly, we don't know everything. And there's a lot more to learn.
Exactly. And like with live performance, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why people choose it. Well, I can't speak for people, but that's part of the reason that I enjoy it so much. It's an adventure. And it's really a question of, when I go out and perform now, well, what's it going to be like today?
Yeah.
When I go in the practice room, it's really, well, how is it going to be today? How's it going to feel? What am I noticing about my body? What are the sounds that I'm making? How is it today versus how was it yesterday? Maybe it's not better. Maybe it's just different.
Yeah. Interesting. What brought you to the job you're in today? So that doesn't have to be like, oh, there was a job opening, obviously, or just what drew you to a position like you're in today?
I've been at CCM for a really long time. And I sort of think that I've had this kind of, in a way, this 360 degrees of CCM experience, because I was a student there. I was an adjunct instructor there. I was a staff member there. I was visiting faculty there. And now I'm full-time educator faculty there. So I've had multiple perspectives. And I'm just really happy to still be there, because again, I love teaching, and the quality of students that we have is, I think, extraordinary. And again, I don't feel like I came to that late. I just feel like it came about now, and that means that now was the time for it to come about. That doesn't mean that I didn't work, excuse me, very, very hard along the way, because I did, and I have, and I am. But I don't know that I've ever sort of sat and looked for that perfect job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of, oh, there's one that seems like a good fit. Let's see how that is.
Yeah, definitely. What are your current goals for your job, field of music, maybe your, like, the musicology department at CCM, something like that?
So one overarching goal, I think, for me is, and this is, well, or for our area, or for CCM at large, and really in the world at large as musicians, I think we need to work really hard to make sure that everyone knows that there's a place for them in historical narratives and also in music making. I mean, if there isn't a literal place, then I think we have to make one. I had mentioned this idea of kind of creative problem solving. It comes from really Paul Honstedt's book. It's called Creating Wicked Students, and it's about this combination of, he says, okay, if we have knowledge, that's one thing, but then what do we do with it? If we have skills, okay, well, that might be going in the organ practice room and playing the same passage over and over and over. Now I've developed a skill, okay. So I have knowledge and a skill, but if I have knowledge and skill and creative problem solving, then I can solve all these kind of problems, these wicked problems. And I think one of the wicked problems is making sure that everyone has a place and everyone is included. Yeah. So I think that means I don't want to teach a lot of great pieces. You know, instead I would like to maybe have people love music history or love music making. That is the process, rather than, you know, I've seen this meme that's circulating. I don't want to teach, I forget how it goes. I don't want to teach good books, or I don't want to teach great books to students. I want to teach students to love reading, you know, the process. Yeah. So I think we need to do a much better job at that in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion and all of that.
I think that's definitely important in these, and I'm speaking for myself now, these formative years of deciding what kind of music I deem important or I enjoy playing or listening to, because for so long it's just more we're told what is important. And I think right now in music overall, it's like, oh, realizing that these pieces were put on a pedestal, but not necessarily because they are, they don't deserve more necessarily than other things. So trying to even out the playing field, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. And you've said that twice now, Laura, and I think that's great, because just last week I saw some publicity for a very large music organization in this country. And I saw sprinkled throughout the marketing, you know, well, this composer, I'm not going to name who it is, but this composer's masterpiece and this composer's masterwork and this composer's, you know, genius and so on and so forth. And I'm not trying to say that maybe those things aren't true, but maybe we don't need language like that anymore. And exactly as you said, why do we think that this is a masterpiece or a masterwork? It's more than likely it's because somebody's taught us that. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I really like the Virgil Thompson one. I've never known a musician who regretted being one. Whatever deceptions life may have in store for you, music itself is not going to let you down. So on the one hand, that's romanticized. On the other hand, I really appreciate that you included that, because I don't recall ever hearing a musician say they were disappointed at the very act of making music. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe not being included or not getting a job or a gig or being accepted in a college or an organization, sure, but not sort of the act of music making itself. I also thought of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you know, who said women belong in all places where decisions are being made, because I think women belong in all places where music is being made.
Yes.
It's a great project. Thank you. Again, no one said to you, gee, you know, Laura, why don't you go make a podcast? I mean, you came up with that. Creative problem solving. Yeah. Public musicology is a whole big thing now, right? I mean, that's a really, really emerging area. And it's just so important. So, and you're contributing to that, I think, with these interviews.
Thank you.
Not just musicology, but music making generally, performance and all that. So it's great.
Thank you. One of the great things that doing this podcast in my graduate school has given me is the opportunity to meet new faculty and meet new people and hear what they're about, what a class with them would be like. And today was no exception with Dr. Swift. I am feeling very motivated. Like she said, these conversations kind of bounce creativity off each other. And I'm really happy to be here, happy to have teachers like this, and I hope to have a class with Dr. Swift in the future. Typically at the end of an interview session with someone, there is sort of a debrief, and they might give me some feedback on the podcast. And I don't typically include those things because it's not necessary for you as a listener to hear me either getting praise or critiqued. But sometimes I think it is important to include, for those of you listening or people listening that are guests that I might be asking in the future, that there is a benefit to what I'm trying to do. And I hope that it benefits you, the listener. I hope it benefits all of my guests. And I think this podcast does have a lot of potential and a lot of power if you let it affect you that way. So I just wanted to say thank you again to Dr. Swift. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, there are multiple ways you can do so. First of all, you can go to our website, which is detoursinmusicpodcast.weebly.com. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called Detours in Music Podcast. We also have a Facebook page and Instagram account where you can like and follow us. The Detours in Music Podcast is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, but on Apple Music podcast apps, you can subscribe and rate us. If you ever want to get in touch with me and give more direct feedback, you can email me at detoursinmusicpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you catch the next one.